Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the very first SILA Foundation webinar for 2021, Safeguarding Your Online Privacy. I'm Cindy Davidson. I'm the Education Trustee for SILA Foundation. I'm also Director of Securities and Content for ExamFX. Today, we're delighted to be hearing from Michelle Covert, the Governance, Risk, and Compliance Manager for Vertafore. Michelle is a cybersecurity enthusiast with expertise in information, risk management, regulatory compliance, and security technologies. She has a particular interest in insider threats, is involved with the ISACA International's She Leads Tech initiative, and has written for Cybersecurity Magazine. She's a SILA member and volunteer, and also works with community groups providing services to low-income families. Today, Michelle will provide us with guidance on improving our privacy protections online, specifically with email, passwords, devices, network security, and drumroll, social media. We have about an hour, and we hope to leave a little time at the end for questions, but if you have questions along the way, go ahead and enter those in the Q&A. We'll also be doing a few polls, so pay attention. And now I'm going to turn this session over to Michelle, and I'll be back at the end to wrap us up. Take it away, Michelle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Covert. As Cindy mentioned, I'm with Vertafore. I've been there for more than 15 years, 16 years next month. And I have a strong love for security, strategy, risk management, you name it. So today, I've got a couple of topics that we're going to go through. And Cindy already mentioned those, but, email, password safety, data device protections, network security, IoT resilience, social engineering, and on social media, and then knowing your breach status. So the first thing we kind of want to get into is why do we need to do email and password safety? In response to the pandemic, businesses expanded their remote work capabilities, and threat actors have modified their attack vector or how they're attempting to gain access to your network, your accounts, your devices, because they want to continue to exploit things. So Verizon Business does an annual report where they analyze security events, and they analyzed over 150,000 security events from 2020. Of those, they had 32,000, which met their quality standard for incident response. And what's really important about these metrics is knowing the greatest risk to your organization. So of the 32,000, 78% were due to credentials being compromised or stolen. So this could be, someone makes an error, it could be phishing emails, and so that was in the US, specifically North America. Worldwide, it was about 67%. So 33% of those credentials being stolen were social engineering tactics, which is more commonly known as like phishing or vishing or smishing, all the ings. And depending upon your role, you could be a target for a spear phishing campaign. So in this session, we're going to cover some topics on how to better secure yourself and protect your online privacy. If you want to know some more information on phishing, we can talk about that at the Q&A session. So let's talk first about password management. So everybody, this is where we're going to get to our first poll. So passwords are hard, right? They're hard to remember, which is why it's a super weak point, and it's how we get exploited. So if we can go ahead and do our first poll, it is, are you using a password manager? Something that you would have for work, that you have one for personal use? Do you have one for both? And we want to give people a little bit of time. Ooh, I'm loving these numbers. All right, so we're getting in the poll, and about almost 50% of respondents, almost 50%, 48% have said that they are using a password manager both at work and at home. The reason why a password vault or management system is pretty critical is that it provides you an encrypted option to store all of your credentials in one location. So really you only have to know, two passwords. One, to get onto your device, and then two, to get into your password manager. It can then store everything else for you and can even help you generate strong passwords or passphrases. And there's a bunch of them in this kind of vendor space. So there's LastPass, OnePass, KeyPass. You Google it, you will find recommendations on top vendors in that space. Some have free offerings that you can use for personal use, and others do not. However, what's really important about getting a password manager for your personal use is that there is a trend where people have good habits for security at work because they have good habits for security at home. So if you're kind of doing both activities, so securing your credentials, whether it's for banking or shopping, the same way you would secure your credentials for work, you're going to make yourself a more well-protected individual when it comes to online privacy. And, we talk about passwords. So the question then becomes the password or the passphrase. So password policies are pretty common, right? You have to be at least 8 characters, a mixture of alphanumeric, special characters. You have to change them every 60 days, so on and so forth. So while this is this is the bare minimum of what you should be doing. The longer the password you make, the harder it is for a hacker to try to crack. So for example, they've done some calculations at various, schools like MIT, et cetera. And they can say that a 9-character password would take about 5 days to break, whereas an 8-character password could take about 52 seconds. So less than 1 minute, you could totally have your account compromised by a hacker. And we're looking at 10 characters would be about 4 months of work, 11 characters, 10 years, 12 characters, you're looking at about 200 years. And what's really important about this is malicious actors want to do what is easy, and they want to do as little effort as possible, but reap the best reward. So if you make it very difficult for them to hack your password, they're going to pass on that account. They're going to keep moving. So we talked about passwords or passphrases. So passphrases is something that is more common, more popular. You're seeing it in security standards for businesses, but a passphrase is something that's at least 15 characters. So we said 12 characters is like 200 years. I didn't even look to see the math on 15 characters. What's nice about a passphrase is that you're still using, a mixture of alphanumeric special characters, but you make it something meaningful. So I just pulled up an example. It says, I'm glad my password is a good one. And this is just an example, like, please don't ever use that, just for record. But, or you can see my dog. So Taffy is my brown dog. And you can change letters to alpha characters or special characters to kind of give it a good mixture of characters, and then it makes it easier to secure your accounts. The other thing, that's really important is oftentimes, people have one, maybe 2 email accounts outside of work. So maybe you still have your AOL account or your Yahoo account or Hotmail account from, I don't want to date myself, but like 20 plus years ago. And you're using that for everything that you do online. And what's really recommended is to not use the same email and password combination for any of your accounts. Apple iOS actually has a new feature where if you're saving passwords to your keychain, it'll actually tell you of all the passwords and usernames that you've saved, how many of your accounts by website that you're using have the same password, giving you kind of advice to go and change those. However, maybe you don't want to have more than one email account. There is a hack that you can do with Gmail, which is actually kind of great. So basically, if you want to personalize the email address that you're putting into a website, so say you have to sign up to register for something like grocery rewards or Target, Cartwheel or whatever it's called, you can actually modify your existing Gmail account to put that plus sign before the ampersand, and fill in the website name at gmail.com. And basically, when you're getting your emails, you can look at who they're sending it to in that field, if you kind of dig into your email a little bit. And then you'll know which companies are kind of sharing your information with third parties, which is kind of important. So you can go and unsubscribe or ask to be removed from their website. And, using a unique email address for various tasks can kind of be overwhelming. But when you start using an encrypted credential management solution or like a password manager, you can label them. You don't have to remember every single password, and it's all in your vault. So you can have an email for banking, and you can have an email for, shopping, or you can have an email for your cloud. That's all different and not, your work email. So talking about data and device protections, this is kind of where we get into things that might seem like they're extra steps, but they save in the long run. So securing your devices with anything, we're all at home right now, or a lot of us are working from home right now. Every device that you have, whether it's a laptop, a tablet, a smartphone, it's going to come with the option to create a PIN or a password or a biometric validation on the device. So your phone does like a face recognition or a thumbprint. There's really little time needed to set that up, but it actually is really critical that you have it in place, because say you lose your device, if you don't have a PIN or a password, you're basically giving away all of your information that was on that device to a malicious actor when they find it. When we're talking about PINs, so it's important to make it unique, but nothing that's too personal. So no birth date, no anniversaries, no, not your name, not your kids' names, not your dog's name, but something that is meaningful so it's easy to remember. And then, where you have the opportunity, use the biometric validation. I don't mind sharing my biometric validation on my device because I know that I'm better securing it. So automatic updates. So what's really important about configuring automatic updates is that there are thousands of vulnerabilities, probably tens of thousands of vulnerabilities that are found every day. Tens of millions of malware signatures are identified every year. So when you're getting an update, I get that some people are like, oh, I want to see how it is in beta, or I want to test it, and that's fine. But the risk that you run with not patching or updating your operating system or your firmware is that threat actors have a strategy. They'll actually utilize the period of time when a 0-day vulnerability is announced to the press, and the fix is there. Like say the WannaCry ransomware attack or the SolarWinds security event. So when the patch becomes available, they'll actually start targeting businesses that don't have that patch in place, because they end up being low-hanging fruit. So instead of trying to, say it's 100 companies and 50% of those companies patch, then it's 50% of the less time that malicious actor is going to need to spend trying to get in to that system utilizing that exploit. And then lastly, as a general setup, is utilizing full disk encryption on your devices where it's available. So this can be an extra step, but like Windows OS or Windows 10, and Apple iOS have these features available. It's pretty easy to just turn it on. And when you have the full disk encryption and a PIN or a password for your device, if it gets lost or stolen, basically they've got a brick. They're not going to want to spend that amount of time it's going to take to get into your device, especially since they have to know the password and the encryption. So we're getting, things are starting to open up right now with the pandemic. So there's important, important steps you should take when you're going mobile, when we're all going mobile again. Can't wait. But basic, hygiene, configuration, and settings. So the first thing is a personal firewall. This is a simple configuration on your device. It's generally going to be configured for always on. Your antivirus software generally will want to do that. But having a personal firewall, if you're always going to be connected to Wi-Fi or other networks, making sure you have the firewall on is going to actually prohibit some connection attempts to your machine. So the next is disabling file sharing. This can be really convenient when you're at home and you've got a bunch of computers on a network. But when you're in public and you have on file sharing, you're permitting connections to your device without passwords. And so any data that's on there could be stolen, files, pictures, just could be a nosy person at a coffee shop. They could download your information, and it may or may not be something that's prevented by your antivirus. This last one is the concept of network discovery. So again, this is another convenience tool that's built into devices to help them locate one another when they're on the same network. However, when you're in a public Wi-Fi situation or it's not your own network, say you're at an airport or a coffee shop, if you don't have the disabled network discovery enabled or disabled, excuse me, oh my goodness, then effectively any computer that's there could see your computer, your device name. They could then try to target you later. So when you turn this off, effectively you go into stealth mode. There's a Windows configuration feature, which is literally disable network discovery, but on a Mac, it's called stealth mode. Just a little flip and you're good to go. So, fun fact, fitness trackers or running watches, I don't run, but I do other things. But your fitness trackers actually can broadcast like sensitive information. So your name, your address, a credential, depending upon the apps that you have, GPS data, and it does it usually through Bluetooth. So some of them will actually let you shut off the Bluetooth. So when it's possible, and you're out, disable the Bluetooth while you're running. So someone isn't picking that information up. Or if you're out in public, disable the Bluetooth if you're not going to need it. This effectively will protect your information in the long run. And really, it can continue to keep the fitness tracking without GPS. And it will load it to your phone at the end of the workout or at night, when you've got it docked on the station. All right. So MFA, between, working remotely or even your familiarity with the New York DFS cybersecurity regulation or the NAC Model Act, multi-factor authentication has been a part of our work life for a while. However, it's not just beneficial for work. It's definitely should be utilized on your personal network and devices. Most of your banks, your email providers, social media, or other businesses already have two-step verification processes in place. That's what they call it, two-step. So they're going to ask if you want to give them your mobile number or an alternate email address. And it does take a couple of extra steps to set this up. And it does take, like an extra 30 seconds to go from attempting to log in to getting your token, but the benefits are numerous. When you have two-step verification, you can get alerts if someone's attempting to utilize your credentials to get into that account. So what happens if you lose your phone or you can't access your email account? We can worry about that when that happens, but with a two-step process, there are most definitely recovery options available, which is usually pretty easily resolved through customer support request with that vendor. Oh, and my favorite thing. So ransomware. Being resilient to ransomware is kind of critical. We've seen it in large scale attacks, but it isn't just affecting businesses. This is affecting a lot of consumers. So as you can see, I pulled this from Malwarebytes report that they published at the end of 2020. So 22% of organizations had to cease business operations because of ransomware. And 35% were victims of ransomware. This is not insignificant, and it's certainly costly. So what are some things you can do to kind of protect yourself or make yourself resilient from ransomware? First and foremost, anti-malware, antivirus software. Every device that you get, you will generally have something on the device, at least initially when you purchase it, and then you can renew it or find a different vendor. But you should definitely have anti-malware, antivirus software on your machine. A lot of the stuff that they're coming out with now is called Next Gen AV, and it does auto protect features. So while you're actually working, if you happen to visit a website that's questionable, it'll actually pop up and be like, oh, you're going someplace dangerous. Let's not do that. Or if you happen to click on an email attachment that's malicious, it can be like, oh, we've got to quarantine this. And it can do it on the fly instead of waiting for a full scan. You should be doing full scans every day. But the other way to kind of make sure you're resilient to ransomware is to back up your data on your personal devices. That way, if you're a victim, you're not paying Bitcoin. You're simply going to restore your device from a backup instead of paying the ransomware. You might be worried that, yet another monthly expense, but really there are a ton of providers in this space and they all have very affordable options. Some of them start as little as like $2.99 a month, or others will give you a discount if you pay the year in full. They'll give you like 30% off. And there's just significant savings, and it is pretty inexpensive, all things considered. You wouldn't want to lose, some, like, say, for example, pictures of a loved one. We'll go ahead and address the question. So there's a question from M. Arnold. The poll didn't have an option of not using a password manager at all. You're correct. I had presumed that at work, everyone is already using a password manager, as these are, free. There's free options, there's freeware, or you can get a provider that can also give it to you relatively affordably. But you most definitely should be using a password manager at Vault, saving them in a spreadsheet or a text pad or a notepad is pretty risky. So going back to the backups, one or two things that you need to think about with your backups is where are you going to do it, or what vendor are you going to be working with? Read the terms and conditions. This applies to Google, Facebook, Amazon. It doesn't matter. Read how they're going to use the data that you put on their service, what your rights are, what your protections are. This is pretty critical because in some instances, if you use like a free version of like a cloud storage or backup solution, you may be giving up rights to your content, and no one wants to do that. That's your property. Two, review your files and your data, your images, and determine if you should even be keeping it. Do you really need a receipt from 7 years ago for a blender? Probably not. Definitely purge the old and unused files to save some space, which will ultimately save on cost of backing up your data. Oops. Sorry, guys. Working from home. Gotta love all the animals and children. All right. So on to network security. So most every device that we have, so laptops, tablets, smartphones, are Wi-Fi enabled and can automatically connect to familiar networks, but this comes with a number of risks. You have Wi-Fi imposters. So these are actually malicious actors who set up a Wi-Fi connection that is intentionally insecure, and this allows them to monitor your traffic for stealing credentials or data or documents. So whenever you join a new Wi-Fi network, usually your device is going to ask you if you want to, remember it. Don't. If you have to use the Wi-Fi, leave it as public. Don't remember it. If you're on your laptop, chances are it can automatically forget it if you mark it as public and not home or work. But what if you need the Wi-Fi connection, right? So you're at the airport, or you're at the coffee shop, or you're at the restaurant. How else can you protect yourself? Well, you can utilize a virtual private network. So we're going to go ahead and do our second poll. Which is, do you use a personal virtual private network? So not the network that you might be connecting to from work, but actually on your own network at home. All right. Give it a couple more seconds for responders. Excuse me. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go. So for, do you use a personal virtual private network? 43% said no. 31% said yes, which is awesome, and virtual high fives. And we had 26% that said, I'm not sure. So virtual private network is going to route your traffic through a single remote server, but it has tightened security controls in place. So think of it like, a pipe that's going to connect your sink to, I guess, your sewer. And you don't want leaks in your pipe. You don't want anyone to be able to, have get into the pipe, and I guess that's a terrible analogy, but basically, the reason why you would want it contained is you're not going to worry about people monitoring your traffic. If you are on a free or Wi-Fi network that's public, and there are a number of free and paid services available. So there's iVPN, there's ExpressVPN, Surfshark, you name it. And if you can't install a VPN, because again, there's a cost, I recommend configuring or installing anti-tracking or ad blocking extensions to your browsers. So let's talk about browsers for a quick second. There is a new recommendation coming from security advisors to use separate browsers for kind of low risk activities versus high risk activities. So low risk activities like casual browsing, I want to look at the news. High risk activity would be like banking, medical portal, any e-commerce transaction that you're doing. And there are anonymous browsers that have been getting a lot of press lately. So you've probably heard of DuckDuckGo, which is an anonymous browser. And then there are others as well. There's Tor browser. There's a whole bunch of them. You can Google it. A lot of the time you'll actually find that for the private VPNs and anonymous browsers kind of go hand in hand with the service offering. The Internet of Things, baby monitors, smart forks, if you can believe it, and toasters that can play Doom. If you want an interesting video, go on YouTube, look for the toaster that plays Doom. So I'm sure you've all heard the stories about baby monitors being hijacked. And unfortunately, it's not an urban legend. While technology and gadgets and other web-enabled devices may offer promises of convenience, they expand your threat surface and could be leaking your data. So hackers will utilize vulnerabilities in the firmware or the software of these kind of household gadgets, and they'll exploit, misconfiguration of those devices. Once a device gets compromised, it can be repurposed by a malicious actor for any number of ways. Probably most impactful, aside from the creepy baby monitor hijacking, is a volumetric DDoS attack, or a distributed denial of service attack. Effectively, your device and your Wi-Fi network becomes a virtual weapon. They take it and they will program your baby monitor, your security camera. I think my coffee machine could connect to my Wi-Fi, but they will use it as a way to send packets or requests to a specific website or hosted resource. Back in October of last year, Google finally disclosed that they experienced the largest volumetric DDoS attack back in 2017. They were actually being sent 2.5 terabytes per second, which is 2,540,000,000,000 bits per second. That is a ton of data. I mean, if you think about it, a Word document might be 23 kilobytes in comparison. But you're kind of, what do I do? Right? So you can build resilience to your smart devices a couple of different ways. So changing the default settings of the device. This is true of your Wi-Fi router. This is true, of anything that you get. Automatically start hardening your devices by changing and going in and reviewing the settings that come as a default. Turn it off when it's not being used. If it's not on, it can't be used, even if it's been compromised. This one's pretty interesting. So disabling the automatic content recognition. So ACR, as it's better known as, is actually an information gathering, kind of scraping process that your smart TVs can do, which is totally used for marketing purposes. The irony is that most of it is used for TV sales, but you've already purchased the TV. So effectively, I think they're just looking to see how you might be using it to target other people. And then, of course, disabling GPS services, as I already mentioned, and then creating unique credentials. So if it came with it, don't trust it. And my favorite part that is true, this is where my heart loves security, social engineering. Well, we're going to focus today more on social engineering and security, but let's talk about social engineering at first. So social engineering is a manipulation technique that exploits human error to gain private information or access or things of value data. Basically, it's a crime called human hacking, where you're getting taken advantage of. It could be to spread malware. It could be to get credentials. It happens online. It happens in person. It could happen on your smartphone. You could get a smishing text. I like to actually take them and I share mine on social media when I get them. And I rate them because, some of them are pretty bad, but others aren't so bad. So what exactly are social engineering attackers trying to do, right? They want to sabotage, right? What you're trying to accomplish. This could be a business. This could be, personal activities, disrupting data, just causing harm. And then the second is really theft, right? So they want money. Often when they get access or information, it then gives them money, or, they can deploy ransomware, and again, money, Bitcoin. So what they'll do is they'll gather background information on you or a large group of individuals that you might be a part of. They'll integrate themselves into that group. So you might get a random friend request on Facebook of someone that you have no idea who it is, or on Instagram, or a follower, or some random message. and they're generally a bot and they're pretty bad. But just be conscientious of it. If you don't know them, don't accept it. Then, for people who unfortunately did fall for the social engineering, they'll actually start exploiting the victim. So they gain your trust and then they break your trust. It's like a cycle of betrayal. And they start attacking you. And then the last is, they're going to disengage. So once they have obtained what they want, they're going to ghost you. That's what they really want. So how to kind of tell when you're being socially engineered is, heightened emotions, right? So they want to cause fear, excitement, curiosity, anger, guilt, sadness, you name it. It's sudden and it is definitely intense. Urgency, right? You must send me $100 to claim your foreign lottery, or you must review your performance evaluation or you won't receive your bonus. So they're saying you have to take an action or else something really bad is going to happen. And if all else fails, what they'll try to do is they will try to get you to believe them as if what they're saying is true. And it's not that it's going to be 100% true. It's probably going to be about 75% true. So you're going to need to kind of look at what they're saying and say, is it actually true or is it just kind of believable? And if it's just kind of believable, it's suspicious, as my kids would say, or sus, and you should definitely not pursue that conversation. When we're talking about how to check yourself for social engineering attacks, if you're concerned that you've been socially engineered, think about your emotions. Where did the message come from? Was it a legitimate sender or someone that you know? Did your friend actually send the message? People unfortunately get their credentials compromised pretty easily and not infrequently on Facebook. And so you'll get a random message with a malware link in it that then takes you someplace to do bad things to your device. So take a second to actually look at it. Like, does it seem like it's something in character of your friends do? And if it's questionable, don't click on it. Does a website you're going to seem odd? Does it sound too good to be true? It probably is. Attachments. I'm sure you've all, heard a lot of this with your annual security awareness training that you do with your work. But again, this happens in real life all the time. So let's talk about social media. Stop oversharing. We're ready for our next poll, right? So I've got this little meme here, which says, which character from Stolen Identity are you? Which is, basically a pun on the little share pictures or links or questionnaires that people put on Facebook. Like, let's get to know me. My favorite color is purple. I grew what street I lived on when I was in 3rd grade. All of this stuff it is really out on social media because it's to steal your identity. So think about those questions, right? So I took a quiz. It asked me, where did I grow up? Who was my teacher in 3rd grade? What does this remind you of? It really kind of should remind you of those security questions that are utilized to recover your account if you've forgotten your password. Kind of scary, right? So whether you do it or you don't do it, be careful about what you're doing. I personally don't like the questionnaires. I'm like, oh, that's nice. I like to be mysterious, just like, almost 75% of responders, which is awesome. If you do share, be careful of who you're sharing it with. You have the ability to adjust your audience if you're doing those things. But once it's on social media, it's on social media forever, or it's in someone's backup forever. And that goes into a data lake. So take that into consideration. Other things that you can do with social media, I'll just pick on Facebook because most people will utilize it, or a lot of people utilize it. You can review your activity log. So go in and look and see, make sure that it's only you that's been using your account. If you don't have that 2-step login turned on. The other thing that you can do is if there's a security setting that says, I want a login approval before I let someone log into my account from an unrecognized device. So this is something that that's a great question. We got a quick question. So it says, why would one answer questions with real information? That's great. I actually don't. I prefer to make up responses to my security questions, and then I actually save them in my password management system. It's like, who's your favorite teacher? And I'm like, Miss Kiwi, because that's not real. And it looks like it's real, but it's never something that's going to be tied back to actual personal information. So great point. So the other thing we can talk about when you're on social media is intentionally being elusive. Leave groups that are, publishing a lot of information or might have clickbait, and then avoid clicking on those sponsored links. We know Facebook is monitoring us. We know Facebook and Google are also monitoring us. And sometimes I wonder if my phone is listening to me or somehow tapped into my brain, because I'll think of something and then it shows up in my ads. I'm sure that's happened to a bunch of you, and it's a little creepy. So just be careful about what you choose to share on social media and with whom. Oops. So the last thing that's kind of critical is knowing your breach status. You can do this a number of different ways. I brought up this website where you can actually search for specific accounts, where there's like 200 known breaches that are in their database and over 10 billion credentials that have been compromised in the last 5 years. So chances are you have an account that is in their database, and they can tell you which event that it came from, which service that it was a part of, I guess I should say. So once you know if your account's been compromised, go and change your password immediately, right? The second thing is, say you're not using that service anymore, like MySpace. Although I hear it's getting a comeback. But if you're not using MySpace anymore, you have the option to go in and actually retire your account or ask them to permanently disable your account. And then, the other option that we have is, if you're on that list a bunch of times, you can actually sign up for like credit monitoring or identity monitoring that kind of comes with credit monitoring, and you'll get alerts. So I know for a fact that, because I have this in my role, I'm also often spearfish targeted. But at the same time, whatever I set my MySpace password to 100 years ago, I know has been compromised. At the same time, I still want to monitor to know how many times my credential is then resold on the dark web. And you can get this from a number of free services. I think Credit Karma has it. I know that you can always pull, a free credit report every year from each bureau. And it's really important to make sure that you are aware if your identity has been stolen and or compromised. And now, if there's any questions that anyone has, or in general, I'd love to address them.
So, sounds quiet. Thank you so much, Michelle. That was so interesting. I was actually going to ask you your thoughts on facial like using the Face ID to turn your phone on. Is that a good idea, bad idea? I hear mixed things about that.
I mean, it depends on your comfort level with sharing information. So I'm a member of InfraGard. I have, TSA, Global Check, and I've already given away my biometric information. The FBI has done, a bunch of checks on me because of where I work in this industry. And for me, it's not a big deal. I'm like, it's already out there. It's something that's necessary. So I do it, but not everybody's comfortable with it. Effectively, you have to make a choice, and you can just turn it off and just use a PIN or a password. That works too. Great
So
question.
I mean, all the kids do it, right? Because it's convenient and it's easy. As someone who has attended perhaps a few protests in recent months and years, we're told to turn that off because it can be used to get into your phone. Even if you don't want someone to get into your phone. So yeah, and then we have a couple more questions. So we've got from Barb. Is it safe to accept cookies on a pop-up when you go to a website? What are your thoughts on that?
So it depends. So it depends on the site, right? So I automatically do not accept cookies unless it's a trusted site that I've added through my browser explicitly for that domain or IP. If it's a general website, I don't do cookies. And I always go through, and even if I went to a site where I did allow a cookie, right, or I did permit it for a one-time visit, I purge those regularly. As like a data retention, cookies are something that I would purge no less frequently than every 30 days from your device.
Oh, good advice. Awesome. And then we have another question on, is there anything you can do if you think your phone is listening to you? And I know we've got an Alexa. We were talking about the election recently. Alexa thought we were talking to her when we said the word election because it sounds like Alexa. But I mean, are our devices listening to us, and what can we do about it?
They are, and there's configuration settings. So we talked about Alexa. So with Alexa, they actually have a mute button, which will mute and stop the recording. I usually will keep most all of them on mute, except for one when we need to utilize it. Because trust me, Amazon has tons of data centers and tons of rack space to store all these recordings, and they can, if they were legally compelled to, disclose it, right, in a court of law. So I recommend muting them. On your phone, there are options to turn off listening, right? So it's usually like on Apple, it's Siri. There's going to be in your configuration of every single app, you can go through and actually disable all the listening or attentive that it does. It can take a little bit of digging for some of the applications, but there's almost always a YouTube video on how to go in to do whatever you're looking to do for your specific device.
Very cool. We have just a comment that this is so overwhelming. I think everyone feels that definitely from time to time. Hopefully this webinar has helped everyone to feel a little bit more empowered to take care of their and protect their privacy. Sometimes I just say, oh, it's already gone. Like it's too late. Everybody knows everything there is to know, right? But these were great suggestions and very much appreciated. If there are no more questions, I think I'm going to go ahead and close us out. I would be very remiss to not extend an extra thank you to Vertafore for its long-term commitment to SILA and the SILA Foundation, not just financially, but through volunteerism and thought leadership. Vertafore's Vice President of Product Development, Tim Owens, serves as Secretary on the SILA Board of Directors. And it was a discussion with Tim at last February's board meeting that sparked the idea for today's topic and led to Michelle being able to join us as a featured speaker today. So thanks to Vertafore and thanks to Michelle. This webinar has been recorded like they all are, and we will post it to the SILA Foundation YouTube channel and website in the next couple of weeks. You'll be able to get a hold of it. Our speaker's contact information is available in the invite, I think, so you can reach out to her with any specific or private questions you might have. After we close, you will be receiving a post-webinar survey. Be sure to fill that out and provide your candid feedback that helps us improve these webinars going forward. SILA Foundation provides these webinars free of charge as part of our mission and outreach. If you learned something of value today, consider a personal or corporate donation to the foundation. No amount is too small. I really mean that. We do rely on donations to keep programs like these webinars going. And also the foundation recently opened up the webinars to sponsorship. If your firm might be interested in sponsoring a future webinar, just let me or Mary Ellen Hammock know. And I think that is going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you in February on the 18th. Thanks, guys.